In the quiet stretches of space, far beyond the reach of most civilizations, the galaxy had lived in a fragile peace for centuries. The stars, though distant, had always been a symbol of hope, guiding ships to new worlds and fueling the dreams of countless species. But now, that peace was on the verge of shattering. It all started with a signal, a strange, distorted transmission, coming from deep in the uncharted sectors of the galaxy. It wasn't a warning, nor a distress call. It was something far more chilling. Silence. For days, all that could be heard across the galaxy was static. No one knew where it came from or what it meant, but all who heard it felt an undeniable sense of unease settled deep in their hearts. The galaxy had never known true danger. There had been wars, conflicts, and occasional uprisings, but nothing that could bring the entire galaxy to its knees. Not until now. The first planet to feel the weight of this new threat was Virion, a peaceful world known for its vast oceans and beautiful landscapes. It was home to a highly advanced alien species, the Anari, whose peaceful nature had made them famous across the galaxy. Their technology was unmatched in many ways, and they had long believed that peace was the only way to maintain balance in the universe. But the Anari were wrong. They had never faced an enemy like this before. The calm morning skies over Virion were torn apart by a flash of light, brighter than 1,000 suns. It wasn't just any flash. It was the arrival of something far more terrifying. The horizon shimmered with strange energy fields as massive ships, unlike anything the Anari had seen, began to descend from the heavens. They were massive, sleek, and exuded an aura of power that sent a shiver down the spines of everyone who laid eyes upon them. The first thing the Anari noticed was how quiet the ships were. No sound, no hum of engines. It was as if these ships had been crafted to slip through space without leaving any trace. It felt unnatural, like something that didn't belong in the galaxy. And before anyone could react, the ships released their deadly cargo, weaponized drones that began to wreak havoc across the planet. The drones weren't just machines. They were living creatures, perfectly designed for destruction. They moved with the precision and skill of a predator, tearing through the planet's defenses like a knife through soft flesh. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were now nothing but ruins. The Anari tried to fight back with their advanced technology, but it was clear from the first encounter that they were not prepared for this kind of enemy. Nothing they had could stop the relentless wave of destruction. Back on Virion's capital city, the leaders scrambled to figure out what was happening. Communications were down, and there was no sign of any fleet to defend them. Panic spread like wildfire, and the Anari's once peaceful world was suddenly plunged into chaos. Then came the worst part, the silence. As the bombs exploded and the cities burned, the only thing anyone could hear was the eerie calm of the destruction. The enemy didn't speak. They didn't demand surrender. They didn't even leave a warning. They simply destroyed. On the edges of Virion's largest city, a group of Anari survivors huddled in a shelter, trying to make sense of it all. One of them, a young woman named Vara, watched the destruction unfold in horror. She had never seen war, not like this. Her people had long believed that war was something of the past. But now, her world was burning before her eyes, and she was powerless to stop it. In the midst of the chaos, a single transmission broke through the static. It wasn't from the enemy. It was from an unknown source. The voice on the other end was cold, but full of purpose. "We are here. We are the Deathworlders, and we will stop this." The message was brief, but it carried weight. Vara and the others didn't know who these Deathworlders were, but the name alone sent a chill down their spines. The Deathworlders were legendary across the galaxy, feared and respected for their ruthless survival instincts and unparalleled battle skills. If anyone could fight back against this new threat, it was them. But as the transmission ended, the question remained, were the Deathworlders truly powerful enough to save them? Or had the galaxy already fallen into an inescapable abyss? As the skies above Virion burned with the fire of battle, Vera clung to the hope that this unknown force, the Deathworlders, might be the galaxy's last hope. The first signs of destruction had come too quickly, too violently, and too unexpectedly. But now, just as suddenly, a new hope had arrived. Whether it was enough to turn the tide of this war, no one could yet say. But as the Deathworlder fleet drew closer, the galaxy held its breath. This introduction creates a sense of urgency, fear, and curiosity, keeping the audience on the edge of their seat while introducing the mysterious Deathworlders. Simple English is used to keep the story accessible, while maintaining suspense and setting up the next parts of the narrative. As the last echoes of the enemy's assault faded into the background, the survivors on Virion clung to the fragile hope that had come in the form of the mysterious transmission. It wasn't much, just a few words from an unknown source, but it was all they had. The Anari's once peaceful world now hung in the balance. Would the Deathworlders really come to their aid? Or was this another cruel deception from an enemy that had proven itself capable of anything? Vera and her fellow survivors waited in the shelter, watching the distant flames as they licked the sky, marking the destruction that had spread across their planet. It felt as if the very fabric of the galaxy itself was unraveling before them. The enemy's weapons were beyond anything they had ever encountered, and even now the powerful drones continued their relentless march across the planet, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. But in the distance, something was changing. A new presence could be felt in the air, an energy, a power that had not been there before. The survivors whispered amongst themselves, trying to make sense of the strange sensation. It was as though the very atmosphere had shifted, becoming heavier, more charged. Then it happened. A single ship appeared in the sky. At first it was just a dot on the horizon, too far away to distinguish clearly. But as it drew closer, the shape became unmistakable. A massive vessel, unlike anything the Anari had ever seen. It was not sleek like their own ships, nor did it gleam with the elegance that they were used to. No, this ship was a thing of brutal design, built for one thing, and one thing only: war. The ship didn't come alone. More followed, dozens, then hundreds, until the sky was filled with these enormous warships. They hung there, silent at first, like a storm ready to break. There was no fanfare, no heralding of their arrival. The Deathworlders didn't need to announce themselves. They had arrived, and that was enough. The presence of these ships alone told the Anari everything they needed to know. Help had come. On the surface of Virion, Vera watched in awe. For the first time since the invasion began, she allowed herself to believe that survival was possible. The Deathworlders were real, and they were here. She didn't know what would happen next, but the mere fact that these warships were in orbit was enough to lift her spirits. As the Deathworlder ships descended, they did not approach in a traditional formation. Instead, they spread across the sky in a way that seemed chaotic. But to those who had seen combat, it was clear that it was a tactic, one designed to overwhelm any enemy forces. The ship at the forefront of the fleet was larger than the rest, and as it descended, the enemy forces on the ground began to react, their drones pausing in confusion. The enemy, it seemed, had never encountered anything like this. The Deathworlders had arrived. Vera could hear the thrum of their massive engines as they began to deploy. The sounds were unmistakable, heavy, powerful, like a storm crashing against the sky. With a sudden jolt, massive drop pods fired from the ships and began to fall to the surface, crashing into the ground with earth-shattering force. Each pod was an engine of destruction, carrying warriors who would stop at nothing to protect those in need. As the first pods hit the ground, the sound of battle filled the air. Explosions, the roar of gunfire, and the hum of advanced technology echoed in every direction. But what was most shocking to Vera was how efficient the Deathworlders were. They didn't waste a single movement. Every soldier, every strike was precise, aimed at obliterating the enemy forces. The Deathworlders were not here to negotiate. They were here to end the war. Vera, along with the others, couldn't help but watch in stunned silence. She had never seen anything like it before. The Anari were peaceful, known for their diplomacy and their commitment to solving problems with technology. But these Deathworlders, they were different. There was no subtlety to their methods, no attempt at peace talks. They weren't here to talk, they were here to win. As the battle raged on the surface of Virion, Vera's heart raced. She had seen the power of the enemy, and it had terrified her. But now, she saw something that filled her with awe. The power of the Deathworlders. Their response to the enemy was swift and brutal, and it was beginning to turn the tide. The Deathworlders didn't fight like the Anari. They fought like they were born for it, like war was in their blood. The enemy drones, despite their superior numbers and advanced weaponry, were no match for the ferocity of the Deathworlders. With each passing minute, the enemy's hold on the planet weakened. Vera felt a glimmer of hope rise in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance. As the Deathworlders continued to destroy the enemy forces with ruthless efficiency, Vera found herself wondering, who were these warriors? What made them so unstoppable? As the battle continued, more questions than answers flooded her mind. But one thing was certain. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they were about to show the galaxy just what they were capable of. The sky over Virion was an ocean of metal and fire as the Deathworlder fleet continued to descend into the heart of the battle. Vera watched from the shelter as the skies darkened, not with the shadow of a storm, but with the presence of warships, bombers, and massive drop pods, each carrying warriors like no other. Every ship that fell from the sky, every pod that slammed into the ground, sent tremors through the earth. For the first time since the invasion began, Vera felt an unfamiliar sense of control. The enemy, who had been so sure of their superiority, now found themselves on the back foot. They were unprepared for this new force, a force that did not hesitate, did not seek negotiation, but sought only to annihilate. The enemy drones, once seemingly invincible, began to falter as they faced the overwhelming might of the Deathworlders. The sleek, cold precision of the Deathworlder soldiers contrasted sharply with the cold, methodical drone attacks of their enemies. There was a savage energy in the Deathworlder's approach. Every strike was a promise. Every battle cry a statement that the fate of this planet was no longer in the hands of the invaders. The first Deathworlder soldier to land on Virion's surface had been a towering figure, clad in heavy, battle-worn armor. As he stood tall amidst the chaos, a mechanical arm extended from his suit, and with a deep mechanical roar, he tore through an enemy drone with ease. The others followed, dropping from the skies like meteors, landing with terrifying precision. Their presence alone seemed to stun the enemy, who had no frame of reference for such warriors. Vera could see the contrast in how the Deathworlders operated. While the Anari relied on their intellect, their advanced technology, and their diplomacy, the Deathworlders relied on their sheer force. Each soldier was a walking weapon, each one capable of decimating entire battalions. Their armor, covered in scars of countless battles, seemed almost alive with energy, buzzing with power as they engaged the enemy in brutal close-quarters combat. What struck Vera most was their apparent joy in battle. It was not the cold, calculated approach of the Anari military. These warriors fought with a savage zeal, with a bloodlust that sent shockwaves through the enemy ranks. Each battle was personal for them. This was not just a fight for survival, it was a test of dominance. Vera watched in awe as a Deathworlder soldier sprinted forward, his energy blade flashing through the air. In a single swing, he cleaved through 3 enemy drones, his laughter filling the air like a challenge. The drones did not stand a chance. They were mere toys compared to the raw fury of these warriors. But it wasn't just the Deathworlder warriors that impressed her. Their fleet, their ships, were equally formidable. The bombers that launched from the massive flagship dropped payloads that obliterated enemy strongholds in seconds. The sound of explosions echoed across the battlefield, and the shockwaves sent smaller ships tumbling from the sky. The very landscape itself seemed to tremble under the power of their might. As Vera stood in the shelter, watching the scene unfold, she realized just how far removed the Deathworlders were from anything the Inari had ever faced. There were no subtle negotiations, no attempts to find peaceful solutions. The Deathworlders did not see the universe as a place of balance. For them, it was a place to conquer, to prove their strength. Still, despite the overwhelming nature of their assault, there was something undeniable about the Deathworlders' presence. They didn't fight to subjugate. They fought to protect. Vera had witnessed the terror the invaders had brought to her people, how they ravaged their cities, enslaved their families, and destroyed their heritage. But the Deathworlders, they fought with one purpose: to end the suffering. In a sense, they were the opposite of the Inari. While the Inari fought for peace, the Deathworlders fought for justice. As the battle continued to rage, Vera's heart swelled with conflicting emotions. Fear, awe, and hope warred inside her. The Deathworlders were proving to be more than a force. They were a symbol, a beacon of defiance against the chaos the invaders had brought. Vera could hardly believe it. The Deathworlders, beings who had been misunderstood by so many in the galaxy, were now the only hope her people had. The more she watched, the more she realized that these warriors weren't just saving them. They were shaping the future, with every destroyed enemy drone, every retreating invader, and every victorious battle cry. Vera could feel the tide of the war shifting in her favor. She could see it now. There was hope. The Deathworlders weren't here just to defeat the invaders. They were here to reclaim what had been stolen, to restore the balance that had been destroyed. As the sun began to set over the horizon, the sky still thick with the presence of warships and the rumbling of battle below, Vera knew one thing for certain. The Deathworlders had come, and they were unstoppable. The sounds of war were deafening. On the surface of Virion, the death toll from the invaders' assault had been high, yet the Deathworlder fleet showed no sign of slowing down. With every passing moment, more and more of the invaders' forces were wiped out, their lines broken by the fury of their attackers. The sky was ablaze with the wreckage of ships, enemy drones falling like meteors to the ground, while Deathworlder warriors fought relentlessly, their weapons flashing as they tore through the remaining resistance. Vera stood at the edge of the battlefield, her heart pounding as the Deathworlders pressed forward. Their brutality in battle was something she had never before witnessed. They fought as if they were born for this, each strike purposeful, each move calculated in a way that felt instinctual. They were not like any soldiers she had seen before, not like the Inari military that relied on precision and technology. No, the Deathworlders were something else entirely. They fought with a power that felt primal, unstoppable. The invaders had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. The Deathworlders didn't just fight to win. They fought to destroy, to wipe away the very existence of their enemies. As the last of the invaders' forces attempted a retreat, a Deathworlder warship loomed overhead, casting a shadow over the battlefield. From its massive size, dropships began to pour out, their engines roaring as they descended toward the ground. Vera's eyes widened as she watched the dropships land, and Deathworlder soldiers flooded out onto the battlefield. The ground trembled with each step they took. They moved with a precision and confidence that was unsettling, each of them carrying the weight of their people's legacy and their own personal strength. The enemy was now in full retreat, but it didn't matter. The Deathworlders didn't allow for mercy or escape. The message had been clear. You came to conquer. Now you will be conquered. On the far end of the battlefield, a command ship from the invaders' fleet tried to flee, its engines firing at maximum output, desperate to escape the carnage. But the Deathworlders had anticipated this move. From above, several assault ships shot down, surrounding the command ship in mere moments. A massive explosion echoed across the battlefield as the Deathworlders launched a final strike, obliterating the command ship and its precious data. With the last of the invaders' forces destroyed, the battlefield fell silent. The Deathworlders stood tall over the wreckage of the war, victorious. Their warriors were battered and bruised, but their presence was an undeniable force. The galaxy had witnessed their fury, and the invaders had learned the hard way just how far Deathworlders would go to defend what was theirs. Vera couldn't believe her eyes. The Deathworlder fleet had won, and they had done so with terrifying ease. The invaders had believed themselves unstoppable, yet they had underestimated the power of the galaxy's most feared warriors. Now the invaders remained scattered across the battlefield, their ships wrecked, their drones deactivated. As the last of the Deathworlder soldiers turned to leave the battlefield, Vera saw something that struck her to her core. Compassion. Amidst the destruction, the soldiers paused, tending to the wounded, offering assistance where needed. They were not just savages. They were protectors, warriors who fought to defend those who could not defend themselves. She approached one of the Deathworlders, unsure of how to interact. His face was covered by a helmet, but his stance softened as he turned to face her. His voice was calm but strong. "The battle is over. Your people are safe," he said. Vera nodded, overwhelmed with gratitude and awe. "But why? Why did you fight so hard for us?" The Deathworlder warrior's helmet tilted slightly, as if considering her question. "Because we do not let others suffer. Because we do not stand by when innocents are harmed. And because you are not alone." Vera felt a lump in her throat. For the first time since the invasion, she felt a glimmer of hope. The Deathworlders were not just a force of destruction. They were a symbol of what it meant to stand firm in the face of evil, to defend the helpless. She had seen their fury, their strength, but now, in this moment of peace, she was witnessing their heart. As the sun began to rise over the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the wreckage and the warriors standing amidst it, Vera realized that the galaxy had changed forever. The Deathworlders had made their presence known, and the invaders would never dare to return. The battle was won, but the war had only just begun. The Deathworlder fleet would continue to rise, and with them, a new chapter for the galaxy had begun. One where strength was not just a tool for destruction, but a force for justice, for protection. And with that, the Deathworlder's story was far from over. The battle had ended, but the air still crackled with tension. The once chaotic battlefield now lay in silence, save for the distant hum of the Deathworlder warships as they hovered over the wreckage, their weapons retracted, their engines running at idle. The sight of so many ships, powerful and imposing, made it clear to anyone watching that the Deathworlders were not a force to be trifled with. Vera stood on the outskirts of the battlefield, observing the aftermath of the conflict. The ground was scared with the remnants of the invaders' assault, blackened craters where explosions had ravaged the terrain, shattered pieces of ships scattered like broken toys. Despite the devastation, there was a sense of order returning to the chaos. The Deathworlders had cleared the remnants of the enemy's forces, leaving only those who had fought alongside them, their allies. She approached the command center, where the Deathworlder fleet's leaders were gathered. Their voices were low, purposeful, as they discussed the next steps. The battle had been won, but the larger war was far from over. The galaxy had many enemies, and the Deathworlders had earned their reputation for making sure that those enemies would never dare to return. Commander Kor, the leader of the Deathworlder fleet, was the first to acknowledge her presence. His towering figure, armored in dark, battle-worn gear, turned toward her. His helmet was removed, revealing a scared face that had seen more battles than any soldier should. Yet his eyes that held the weight of 1,000 battles, were kind as they met hers. "You have seen the cost of war," Kor said, his voice grave, but not unkind. "But you have also seen what we are capable of. Your people will be safe for now." Vera nodded, struggling to put her feelings into words. I don't know how to thank you. You came out of nowhere and turned the tide. You saved us. All of us." Kor's gaze softened, but there was a hardened edge to his words as he replied. We did not come to save your people, not directly. We came because your enemies threatened everything we hold dear. You were caught in the crossfire, but now you owe us nothing." Vera could sense the weight in his words. The Deathworlders had not come to fight for the Inari. They had come because their honor and their sense of justice would not allow them to stand by while innocents were slaughtered. It was a revelation that sent a chill through her. "But why us?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Why did you choose to help us?" Kor's eyes met hers, and for a moment there was something vulnerable in his gaze. "Because you are not the first, and you will not be the last. We protect those who cannot protect themselves, regardless of their race or their alliances. The galaxy is a cruel place, and we fight because it's the right thing to do." Vera swallowed, trying to process his words. The Deathworlders, once feared and thought to be nothing more than savages, had now revealed themselves to be something more, a force that would not stand idly by while the weak were crushed beneath the boot of tyranny. They had a code, a sense of purpose that made them more than just war machines. She watched as the Deathworlder soldiers moved among the wreckage, checking on their wounded, offering aid to anyone in need. Despite their terrifying power, there was no arrogance in their actions, only quiet efficiency, a deep understanding of what needed to be done. One of the soldiers passed by her, and she noticed that despite their intimidating exterior, there was something deeply humane about them. The way they looked out for their own, and even the way they treated the Inari who had been rescued, spoke volumes. "You've seen the kind of strength we possess," Kor said, his voice pulling her from her thoughts. "But remember, it is not the strength that makes us who we are. It is our sense of duty that defines us." Vera took a deep breath, absorbing the weight of his words. She had learned in a matter of hours that strength was not the only thing that made someone formidable. Honor, duty, and courage were just as important, if not more so. "What happens next?" she asked. Kor turned and gazed out at the vastness of the battlefield. "Next, we rebuild. We offer protection. We ensure that the invaders never return. And we remind the galaxy that the Deathworlder fleet does not tolerate oppression, nor do we stand by when those who cannot defend themselves are attacked." The deathly calm of the aftermath wasn't just a moment of peace, it was the beginning of a new chapter. The Deathworlders had proven that they were not mere mercenaries or wandering warriors. They were a force for good, as strange as that may have seemed at first. They would not let the galaxy fall to tyranny, and they would not let anyone suffer. Vera understood now. The Deathworlders weren't just here to protect themselves. They were here to protect everyone. And for the first time in a long while, Vera felt a glimmer of hope. The galaxy was not doomed. With the Deathworlders on their side, the Inari and the rest of the galaxy had a fighting chance. As the Deathworlder fleet powered down, their weapons retracted, and their ships hovered silently in the distance, Vera looked toward the stars. The storm had passed, and now it was time for something new. The Deathworlders had changed everything. The dust settled over the shattered battlefield, and the once war-torn land began to heal, just as the wounded soldiers, both Inari and Deathworlder, began to recover. The Deathworlders had shown not just their strength, but their compassion, a combination that made them a force to be reckoned with. For the first time, Vera could see what it truly meant to be a Deathworlder. They weren't just the universe's fiercest warriors. They were protectors, guardians of the weak, and champions of those who had nowhere else to turn. The days after the battle were filled with strange, conflicting emotions. On one hand, the Inari were deeply grateful for the protection the Deathworlders had provided. They had saved countless lives, turning the tide of war and ensuring that the invaders who sought to conquer the galaxy would not succeed. But on the other hand, there was a looming uncertainty. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless worlds and factions. The battle had been won, but the war, the real struggle for peace, was far from over. Vera had been given a unique privilege. She was allowed to speak directly with the leader of the Deathworlder fleet, Commander Kor. Her journey had taken her from uncertainty to awe, And now she found herself standing before this towering figure of authority, feeling both small and empowered at the same time. Kor's presence was undeniable. Even standing still, he exuded power, a quiet confidence that came with years of experience. He was a figure carved from the fabric of war, his battle-worn armor a testament to the countless conflicts he had seen. But in his eyes, Vera saw something more. There was a depth to him, a wisdom that came not from the battlefield, but from a greater understanding of what it meant to protect and to fight for something greater than oneself. "You've seen how we fight, how we protect," Kor said, his deep voice carrying a weight that made her feel every word. "But the war is not over. There are other enemies in the galaxy. We have won this battle, but the future is still uncertain." Vera nodded, the reality of the situation sinking in. The Deathworlders had fought with unmatched fury and precision, but they were not invincible. The galaxy was vast, and enemies were always lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. "What happens next?" Vera asked, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. She had learned much from the Deathworlders, but there was still so much she didn't understand. "The battle for peace is never ending," Kor replied, his gaze never leaving hers. "But we have made a statement. We will not allow the strong to prey on the weak. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves, no matter where they are in the galaxy." The Deathworlder fleet stands as a beacon of hope, a shield against the darkness that threatens to swallow this galaxy whole. Vera's heart swelled with a strange sense of pride. She had come to understand the true nature of the Deathworlders. They were not just mercenaries. They were something more. They were a symbol of hope in a galaxy that had long been starved of it. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, casting a soft glow over the battlefield, Vera felt a renewed sense of purpose. The galaxy had been scared by war, but with the Deathworlders standing as its protectors, it was not beyond saving. There would be more challenges ahead, more battles to fight, but the Deathworlders had shown the galaxy something it had long since forgotten, that no matter how dark the times may seem, there were those who would rise up and defend the light. The Deathworlder fleet began to prepare for its next steps. Ships were repaired, soldiers were reassigned, and the galaxy's first real taste of peace in ages began to take root. The Deathworlders had earned their place in the hearts of the Anardi and other species who had witnessed their strength, and now they were ready to face whatever new challenges lay ahead. Vera felt a quiet, steady hope take root in her heart. There was a long road ahead, but she no longer faced it alone. The Deathworlders had changed everything, and for the first time in a long time, the galaxy's future seemed filled with possibilities. She turned to watch the fleet's ships rise into the sky, their massive forms silhouetted against the dawn. The Deathworlders were not just a powerful force. They were the shield the galaxy had always needed. And with them, peace was no longer an impossible dream. It was a reality just beginning to unfold. As the Deathworlder fleet departed from the war-ravaged planet, the people of the galaxy felt a new sense of hope. They had witnessed firsthand the indomitable spirit of the Deathworlders, their strength, their courage, and their willingness to protect the vulnerable. The war was not over, but the galaxy had found its champions, and the ripples of their actions were felt across the stars. Vera stood on the balcony of the Anari High Command, looking out over the once barren landscape now beginning to heal. The once desolate plains had started to turn green again, small patches of life beginning to bloom as the settlers returned to rebuild. It was a long road ahead, but it was a road paved with new possibilities. The Deathworlders will be remembered. A voice broke through her thoughts. It was Eldros, her comrade in arms, who had fought alongside her during the battle. Not just for their victory, but for their vision of a galaxy where the strong protect the weak. Vera nodded, her mind still processing the enormity of the events that had unfolded. The Deathworlders had not only crushed their enemies with unmatched power, but they had also taught the galaxy a powerful lesson in what it meant to stand up for others. They had shown the people that true strength wasn't about dominance. It was about responsibility. "What happens now?" Vara asked, looking toward Eldros. Eldros gave a knowing smile, his eyes filled with a sense of determination. "Now we rebuild. The Deathworlders may have left for now, but their presence is here. It's up to us to carry forward the torch they've lit." The Inari, once a people known for their fear of outsiders, had changed. The war had stripped away many of their old misconceptions, replacing them with a newfound respect and admiration for the Deathworlders. They had fought side by side, and in doing so, they had forged a bond that no one would ever be able to break. Vara could already see the change. The leaders of the galaxy's various factions were beginning to meet in peaceful diplomacy, many having witnessed the Deathworlders' commitment to peace and justice. It was a new chapter for all of them, one where the idea of the galaxy as a place of unity wasn't just a dream, but a goal worth fighting for. As the first of the Deathworlder ships vanished into the horizon, Vara couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude. She had seen them at their fiercest, but she had also seen their kindness and honor. The galaxy had been forever changed by their presence, and she knew that whatever came next, it was a future worth fighting for. The Deathworlders had come to the rescue when all seemed lost. They had made a stand not just for their survival, but for the survival of everyone they had sworn to protect. And now, as the last remnants of the war began to fade into history, it was time for the galaxy to rise again. Vara turned to Eldros, determination in her eyes. "Let's make sure we honor their legacy." Eldros nodded. "Together, we'll make sure that the future is one worth fighting for." And as the two of them stood there, watching the ships leave, the galaxy slowly starting to rebuild itself, they both knew that this was only the beginning. The Deathworlders may have left for now, but their influence would remain, forever etched in the stars. The galaxy had faced its darkest hour, but in its place stood a future of infinite possibilities. And with the Deathworlders' legacy guiding them, the galaxy would never again be the same.